everyone. Greetings of the day. I hope you are all in your best of health and spirits. So, we are here again with our second workshop and the same old me. So, if you are expecting someone else, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're gonna find my face in almost all of them. Okay, so without any further ado, let's begin. Let me start with introducing myself to all the new participants who has joined us for the second workshop. I think older one might already know me. So I'm Rashika, the CMO at ProApp, and I also lead the content team here. So anything in terms of content, any changes, any issues you found, or any more courses you want us to take us live, then I'm the person to reach out to. Also, okay, let's begin. Let me introduce you to today's speaker. Her name is Aisha. Aisha is a product designer and branding consultant to all the young startups and is working in the industry for almost 5 years now. She has worked with brands like Coca Cola, LinkedIn, and is a product designer at Procreator. So, I think the floor is over to Aisha now.
All right, it's great to see everyone attending the workshop. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And thank you, Rashika, for introducing me. It was such a great introduction. And just to add to that, to introduce myself as your workshop instructor today, I have been in the industry for almost 5 years. I have worked with startups, big companies like Coca Cola, LinkedIn, Dulux, and many more. So let's begin with our workshop. And today we are going to be talking about job hunting. So this is I chose this topic as my first workshop because I see great designers out there and I see so many openings. Yet people might be complaining about not able to find the perfect job or not being able to find the perfect designers. So a lot of time in my career I have done a lot of matching, like I know someone who's looking for a kind of job and I just match them to that, something that would match them. So today we'll be talking about hacks, tips, tricks to get your dream job or the perfect job that will be for you. A little introduction that already happened. Yeah, let's start with the workshop outline. That is what we are going to be talking about today. Firstly, defining your perfect job. Now, the definition for each one of you will be different. For me, it would be different. For every designer, it would be different because we have certain skills, certain preferences that are very subjective, right? So in this first module, we'll be talking about how can we define our first or our perfect job. Second is recruiter's desk. Now, this is looking at the entire scenario from a recruiter's point of view, which is very important because once you know that, you'll be able to adjust your applications, your process accordingly, right? Next is on-ground job hunting. That is what is where do you look for a job and how do you apply and things like that. Now, in the market, in the industry, I see so many jobs, so many of them. Touchwood, our industry is booming because of the digital revolution that is happening right now. A lot of people are switching to digital mediums because of the pandemic and various other reasons. So let's capitalize on that and get the perfect job in design. Your online presence is also very important. We'll talk about how your online presence adds to your credibility, especially when you're choosing to work remotely. Now, recruiters want to trust you, right? They are hiring someone maybe in another city, in another time zone. So what can you do on your part? How can you enhance your social profiles a little bit to look really credible and trustworthy? Lastly, compete like a pro. This is sort of a revelation module that I'm not going to talk about much right now, but kind of a surprise at the end. Yeah, let's begin. Now, even before beginning to look for a job, I would like to make a statement that if you want to be a designer, please be a very passionate one. Do it with passion. because it's very important for you to be self-driven. There'll be a lot of challenges. You'll have to learn a lot of things on your own. You'll have to do a lot of hard work, and you'll have to go through a lot of uncomfortable situations, especially as a UX designer, when you have to basically empathize with the product, with your client, with a lot of with your users, and a lot of other things. It's not always easy. So relax, sit back, and make sure that you have the drive and passion. Fill it up, and yeah, okay, something happened. Never mind. Sorry to interrupt. So yeah, we are moving ahead with passion. Now, before beginning to look for a job, I did a little bit of research on my own as to what's going on right now in the market. How are young designers responding to these so many openings and so many product companies and other service agencies as well. So the usual job application process, what it looks like for an average individual right now, according to my research, is that they mass apply. How companies mass recruit people, they mass apply to say 50 odd companies. They are expecting at least 10 callbacks, and so the conversion rate according to them should be at least 1. However, it does not work like that. You have to be a little more hands-on rather than just applying for a job. When you look at it on LinkedIn or any other job portal, sending your resume and portfolio and sitting to, waiting basically for them to reply to you or something like that. And that wait, trust me, it kills. Sometimes some people would reply to you, some would not. They would just ghost you, right? So many people told me that they would get calls from recruiters, but they would never hear back from them. And this affected the confidence of really, really good designers as well. But no, they were not doing anything wrong in terms of design. It was just that the job application process is slightly more complex than what we would normally assume it to be. And then finally, they would take a mediocre job and settle for it, which I don't want for any of you guys. Obviously, we would want to work with passion. We would want to work. A lot of designers love designing, but they hate their job, which is quite weird. But it's not impossible. That happens because you don't have the perfect match. It's pretty much like a dating site. You need to have the match. There are many good people out there, but maybe they're not your match. So let's start with our first module today, which is defining your perfect job. We'll start with self-awareness. We'll set your preferences, and we'll recognize your goals. Now, these 3 things are really important. You can take a pen and paper, or maybe you can even take a screenshot of the slide that is going to be next, because you can use it as a reference point later when you're actually applying to jobs. There's plenty of fish in the sea, but like I said, things are more complicated. So plenty of fish as in plenty of openings, jobs out there in the market, but which one fish is the one that you would want, right? So we will do sort of an exercise. You can write down the answers of these questions on your notebook, or you can maybe, if you don't have an answer, you can ponder upon it later. But these are some questions that you must ask before even trying to apply for a job. That is your self-awareness. Yeah, this is the part of self-awareness when I ask myself, okay, what do I really want? Where do I want to go? And things like that. So the first question is, how do I want to work? Now, this is slightly generic, but you can actually visualize the kind of perfect job that you want. How do you work better? Do you work better in teams, or you are a solo rider, like you want to freelance and things like that? You have been freelancing, whatever it is. What is your natural style? How do you perform the best? And secondly, what is your perfect working environment? Now, I'll answer this question for myself. My ideal work environment is when I have my desk set up really well. I have my amazing colleagues around me. probably sometimes that is not possible in remote work. So what you do then, how do you set up your work environment in a remote setting? So these are the kind of questions you can ask yourself first. Secondly, how much do I want to work? Now this is, again, the question will be the answer will be mostly that yes, as much as is needed, or 8 hours, 9 hours. Why am I asking this question to myself, right? This is because there's only 24 hours a day, 24 hours in a day. So how much time do you want to work? How much time do you want to invest in learning? And then there's other activities as well. So how do you want to balance it all out? And how much do you want to keep for your work? And accordingly, you can apply for jobs that are either part-time or full-time. And even some full-time jobs would require you to work more than 8 or 9 hours. So are you up for it? Are you up for learning? Now, learning happens a lot of times for young designers who are just starting out. It happens while working, right? However, you should also keep in mind that learning not just design, but learning some soft skills or side skills, like if I am weak at communication, or if I'm weak at language, how do I work on that, and when do I work on that, right? If I'm working on my design skills all the time. So you can balance it out accordingly. Next is, what are my shortcomings while working? Now this is slightly a kind of question that you would be asked in an interview as well. Something like, what are your flaws? Or why shouldn't we hire you? Things like that. If you have given a bunch of interviews, I think you would know that they always ask you that. Now, a little deeper into the question is, you should first ask yourself, when and where do I screw up while designing or while working in general? What are the things that I need to improve upon? What are the things that I can't simply learn and I probably need help with, or something like that? So when you know your shortcomings, even though those are kind of your flaws, they don't pull you down or affect your confidence in general while applying for jobs, right? And while you're asked this question at an interview. Next is, what is my USP? USP is unique selling point, as we know for products, but no, it's not just for products, it's for you as well. Like, what is that one thing that gives you the edge over other applicants or other candidates, and the recruiter would go for you other than them? Yeah, so you must recognize your USP. It can be something very simple. So for me, I think most of the times it was that I was a designer in a pool of other designers where most of them were engineers, or coming from a technical background, developer turned designers, or having a very technical or engineering background. I was a designer who was not from engineering. I did my academics in journalism, and I switched to design. So naturally, I was good at writing. So my edge for them was that I could write all their copy, their UX writing, their copywriting, any content, I could do that. So I would say that, yeah, I can do that for you, and that would be my USP. Now, identifying this can be a little tricky. It's okay if you cannot right away identify your USP, but you can definitely be on the hunt for one. Next set of questions for us is about setting your preferences. Now, up until now, it was about you. What do you want and how you are at the moment, right? Next is how do you want it to be in the future? So you're setting your preferences right now. I prefer this over this, and why, right? So the first question is, where do I want to work? Now, it's not very easy to answer this, because you might or might not know the pros and cons of every kind of work setup. So there's MNCs, there's startups, there is product companies, and there are service agencies. So these four kind of companies. Now, MNC and startup is where you have to choose, and you also have to choose between product and service. Now, they both have their own pros and cons, depending on your style of working or what you prefer. But you must be very keen. You must not be like, okay, I'm applying for 10 startups and 5 MNCs and whatever it is fine for me. You need to be very specific of what you want, so that your application reflects in that and the recruiter recognizes that, and you finally end up having the job that you want. Because so that they think that yes, you are actually hunting for this job and you will be committed to this job, and not like okay with anything. Next question is, what do I want to work on? Now, what do I want to work on? It could be the kind of products, basically. Do you want to work on one product, many? And if many, what kind of products? So I'll give you an example. If you're choosing to work at a service agency, you will get a lot of different kinds of products to work on. You can get a healthcare app, you can get edutech or fintech, marketing, anything, right? You can get web design and whatnot. There's endless possibilities in a service agency. Whereas in a product company, things are quite different. You're working on a single product, you are probably helping in the research, you have one very definite role, and you are growing in that space, you're doing that specialization. So what is that you want to do? Is it product, service? Or if it is service, what kind of industries do you want to work for? So I have this one designer friend who specializes in fintech products, right? He has worked a lot on a lot of fintech products, and he's working at a service agency where he handles all the fintech projects. And that's what he wants to do and he loves doing. So he has a lot of financial knowledge that he combines with his tech and design knowledge. Great, right? So if you are someone who's making a transition probably from the medical industry, you've been a paramedic or something like that, and you've switched to design, you know where to go, right? Next is, what skills do I want to master? Now, master, okay, like you have to choose between so many skills, you have to choose one. That is UX, UI, animation, it can be prototyping, UX writing, illustration, branding. A lot of these, usually product designers know a bit of everything, but even then you must master one of all these skills that will be your core, and that is what you will be recognized for, right? And fourth, and the most important thing actually that we briefly touched upon earlier, is, can I do remote? So work from home comes with its own challenges, and you must ask yourself this as well, that are you willing to overcome those challenges? Do you have a dedicated desk? If not, can you get one? If you can get one, how would it be? Are you focused enough? Are you distracted? How is it? And what is your role? How is it going to be for you in a remote setting? How will you collaborate? How will the work seamlessly be in a remote setting for you? All right, next is all about your goals. Now, you might have said these already, you might not have, but here we are going to touch upon different kind of goals for you, and how your job will play a role in all of these, not just your professional goals. First is, what are your financial goals? So mostly you can take help of an advisor or a mentor here, because they would know your exact situation or your case well. So what is that salary bracket or stipend that you're looking for, and how will you get it in your set of skills, right? So define your financial goals on a yearly basis or on a 5-year basis, or however you want to do it, but make it very, very specific. Next is, what are your professional goals? So any side skills that you want to work upon. So when I earlier in my design career, when I was just joining a new job, I knew UI and UX, and I really wanted to do animation. I knew the software, but I never had the chance to really explore into that. And it was like a side skill that I was really excited about. I wanted to learn, I wanted to do more in the space of animation, maybe UI animation, or it could be a mix of both actually. So I spoke with my seniors, and they kind of put me in a very small space where I could help with animation. So it was nice to know that I can work upon my side skills along with my main job as well. Next is, what are your personal goals? Apart from becoming a kick-ass designer, what else do you want to achieve? Now, this is really important, and this is something that a lot of us ignore. I did, and that is why I would ask you to not ignore it. Is that a lot of times we designers identify ourselves as designers, which is great. I always in arguments, I tell my family, trust me, I'm a designer, even though we're talking about clothes or interior, which is kind of funny at times. But here you really need to also identify yourself as something else as well. So if you can see some really big CMOs or CEOs, their Insta bio or their LinkedIn bio, they do mention that I am a CMO at so and so company, and a mother and a wife. So these all roles also go hand in hand. So you can just think about it right now, that if you have certain personal goals to achieve in your near future, how will this job be, how will it fit like a jigsaw puzzle, like a piece in a jigsaw puzzle, and you can work around your personal goals as well, right? Next, and the last question for the entire self-awareness game is that, where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? I'm sorry, this is very cliche. This is something that is asked in almost every interview, every job interview, but this is actually very important. Where do I see myself in 5 years? Sometimes a lot of us just go with the flow, or we say that we haven't really thought about it because we live in the present, which is great. But planning ahead is always better than going with the flow, because then you are planning for any downfalls, any challenges that come in the way, or anything like that. So when you're asking yourself this question, where do I see myself in 5 years, you can actually talk about all these goals. I would have reached so and so amount of savings in my account. I would have learned so and so skills, and have the position of a senior designer in so and so company. Or all of these questions come together in this one last question. Next, we are now preparing for screenings. Okay, so preparing for screenings, I'm not sure how many of us really do that. When I was applying to a lot of jobs, and like when I started off as a UI UX designer, or a graphic designer, actually, I would say that's how I really began in my college days. I wasn't really preparing for job interviews, or I wasn't preparing at all, for that matter. But it's quite wrong, because you have to compete, right? So you have to do a lot of prep before you present yourself as a designer to a recruiter. So here we're going to see the recruiter's desk, as in what happens in the background on their front. What are they looking for? We'll understand what is happening in the recruiter's zone when they're looking for designers. Next is the application process. We'll dive deep into the entire process of you applying to a job. Next is, how can you prepare? So again, there's plenty of fish in the sea, but so here the plenty of fish is you designers. There's plenty of designers in the industry, in the market, but how will the perfect recruiter find you, right? Now, for this entire module, this is really important. This is the core of what we're going to talk about, that always look at your application through the lens of a recruiter. As in, any detail that you're putting in onto your resume, your portfolio, just empathize with the recruiter a little, and think from their perspective that is this detail important for them? Is there anything else that they would be thinking that I should put? And when in doubt, slash it out. In the sense that if you think that, okay, this particular detail, my school, for example, is not relevant for this kind of a job, because they have clearly said on their job description that they won't look into academics. So don't put your school into your resume. Because what happens is, the more customized the experience for a recruiter is, the more interested they are in hiring you. This is very, very much like your user experience. You personalize the user experience for a user so that they're more interested and they're onto the app or your product. But the same thing can be applied here as well. Make your application, your resume, your portfolio, or anything that you're sending to the recruiter very customized to them. Do not put things like, my hobbies are river rafting and swimming. It's good to put that, but at this point, they need not know that. All right, now, recruiters will be your best friends, trust me. And once I fell in love with this one recruiter that was speaking to me, and I was like, oh my God, this lady is amazing. Why wouldn't I want to join this company? And then I realized that probably I won't even be working with her, but she was so good, right? That is how great companies would basically attract you to really commit to them and join them. Now, when they are hiring, they ask these questions to themselves. Why are we hiring? Is it for simply to expand our team? Or is it for a particular project or particular thing that we are working on? Secondly, what is our budget? Okay, I'm sorry about this, but there is a wrong sentence on my slide. So what is our budget, as in, is your salary bracket fitting into their budget that they want to hire for? Next is, where do we look? Where are the best designers? Now, there are so many job portals that are out there, and not necessarily every job portal has designers. There are some job portals that are very specific to some industries. So we'll talk about this later, as in where to actually look for jobs, where are these recruiters. So these guys also, recruiters also decide on particular portals or platforms to look for great designers, right? Now, when a recruiter is looking at your application, there are filters. They might or might not, but they might get many applications for a particular position, and they apply a lot of filters to it, right? So primary filters are the ones that are not your fault, right? In the sense that these are filters that you can't help. You cannot work on them. So if you are rejected sometimes for a particular job, do not be disheartened. Do not get discouraged that you got rejected for such a great position at such a great company that you would want to work for. Sometimes it's just these factors, that is location. They would sometimes ask you, are you willing to relocate? If you're not, probably you won't make the cut. Salary bracket. Again, the budget thing that I was talking about. Can we afford this resource? Can we negotiate with them? If your expectations are really high, and if you are not okay with that does not fit your financial goals, then you can't help it, they can't help it, and that's all. Next is a mandatory skill. Now, this is something you can probably help if you are willing to work on it, in the sense that sometimes this is mostly with MNCs and not startups, because startups are majorly hiring for character rather than skill. They are like, we can teach these skills to a person who's willing to learn, right? But MNCs have really stringent processes sometimes that it's very difficult for them to move on from. So they would tell you that these are the tools and softwares that we work on, and if you don't know them, we cannot hire you. If you are really committed to this particular company, you can learn those skills and then apply again. But a mandatory skill is also sometimes the most important and the first filter that they look into. Secondary filters. Now, these can be something that you have to your work, you will decide how it goes for you in these kind of filters, right? Like that is your resume, portfolio, and your social presence. Now, resume, again, what are you putting? Are you putting the relevant details or not? Are you putting something that is a lot for the kind of job that you're applying, in the sense that if your resume is say 4 to 5 pages, a recruiter might not have the time to look at it. So how are you fitting it into one page? Are you putting the perfect right set of skills? Are you customizing your resume for each kind of job that you're applying for or not? Please do that. Your past work and your portfolio. So you can send either of these. A lot of times they are okay with looking at your past work than a full-fledged portfolio. But if you have a portfolio of your own, that is great, and that gives you a very, very big edge over all the other applicants. Now, we had our last workshop all about creating a kick-ass portfolio by Sandesh. And if you did not have a chance to attend that workshop, it's on YouTube. You can go and have a look. How can you create the perfect portfolio for your job application? Third is your social presence. Now, again, talking about your social presence, it's very important when you're applying for remote jobs, because you really want them to trust you. Now, our last module talks about how can you work upon your social presence more in detail. Now, filters during the first interview. So what is that your recruiter or your interviewer is assessing you upon in your very first interview? Probably first is your communication, but this is not a very hard and fast skill or a factor, but yes, they will be somewhere or the other judging you. If you're not good at it, it's fine. Sometimes they're okay with it if you're applying for a junior role or something like that, but they will be judging you. The first impressions, they subconsciously also judge you on your communication skills. Now, beware, when I say communication, I don't mean language. I know people who are poor at language but are great at communication. You just need to be very sure that you are conveying through your words, through your sentences, you're conveying the exact same thing that you mean. That is effective communication. Next is self-awareness. They actually judge you upon whether you know what you want. If you seem to be a really confused person, they might be like, this person does not know what they want. How can we trust them? Or how can we know or we help them, right? So be very self-aware. And actually, if you're self-aware, automatically you build that confidence as well in yourself, in the sense that, okay, this is what I want, and this is what I have, and this is what I will be doing. So automatically you get that confidence in yourself when you know what you want, and when you know all those answers, when you have all the answers to the questions that we discussed earlier. Next is commitment. Now, this is something that I also realized quite recently, actually, that recruiters also see how committed will you be to your profession and to their company, in the sense that if you have said, yes, I will accept your offer, will you be on your word or will you ditch them? Because that happens a lot sometimes, that you might have like 3 offers and you have said yes to 2 of them, but then you can't decide one of them, so you have to say no to one. So a lot of times that happens when you are not sure where you're applying, what do you want, and you're not very committed to this one brand or this one company. So they also see how will you be trustworthy on keeping your word in terms of joining them once you have been given an offer letter, or how trustworthy you will be after you start working with them, as in how committed you are as a designer. Are you learning on your own and things like that? So commitment is also a very important factor that they see right in the first interview itself. Excuse me. You must nail the design task. Now, this is a very interesting bit in the entire application process, where you get a design task to do and you're supposed to submit it, and they judge you, and they probably, that's how they know that, okay, the kind of past work or portfolio that you've given matches the quality of design task that you've done, right? So let's talk about the design task that they'll be giving you. What do they judge in your design task? Once you have submitted the task, what are the things that they look for? What are the things that they assess you on, right? So first is your creative mind, your ability to solve complex problems, both UX and aesthetic problems. Now, if it does not matter if you're applying for a UI job or a UX job, creative mind must be for both, and problem solving also is for both. So, for example, in UX job, you'll be given, say, a problem statement, and you'll be designing a solution around that problem statement. But if you're applying for a UI designer or a visual designer, the aesthetic challenge is also there. How are you solving that problem, in the sense that how are you using the software to achieve how you want the entire thing to look? What are you doing on screen? How creative are you to achieve that kind of a visual result, right? So sometimes it's something that only a very experienced designer would notice, that is looking at your task, that, oh, you have made this kind of adjustment, which is a really creative solution, creating it on screen, right? So creative mind is the first most important thing that you need to have for your design task. And yeah, we're designers, so we need to, right? Logical thinking. Now, logical thinking is as important as creativity, because you cannot, as a UX designer especially, you cannot create something that is not practical or functional. It needs to work, right? So being practical and calculative in your problem solving, how are you doing that in your task? Next is your professionalism. They actually notice the details, the kind of efforts you've taken in submitting this task, and the kind of discipline that you have followed in if you're, for example, submitting a PDF. So how are you creating the slides in the PDF? How detailed is it, or how customized is it for their company's branding or something like that? Yeah, so that kind of professionalism really adds brownie points to your task, and the recruiter feels really good about it, that you've taken that extra step to achieve this task, and not just focused on the problem, but also you were punctual, you were very much on point with your email and things like that. Next, and the last point is software skills. So this is the last thing, because software skills can always be learned in a given amount of time if you're a good learner. But they are important if you are starting out. You need to know how to use all its features to the best, and what is your speed. So when it comes to software skills, I have a really fun story to tell you guys. I was applying to this job, and they did not give me a task. They said that we will give you the task online, like on the spot, and you will be given 2 hours to complete that task. So it was really interesting. And then I was doing that task on screen share, which was, you might think that a person would be really conscious about it. Obviously, I was really conscious, because they were on screen share, and I was creating those screens, and they would obviously see how is my speed in that kind of task. So I was given 2 hours, but I asked for an extension. I was like, please give me 30 more minutes and I'll finish this task. And then it was 2.5 hours. I completed the task. They were all the time on screen share, and that's how they assessed as to how I'm using the software and what am I exactly doing. So that was a very fun and different way of assessing, you might come across such a design task which is live, and you might not have like 2-3 days to do it. So I was ready for it. You also, I think, should be, because it was fun. It was really fun. Because later we talked about, when I moved to the interview round, we talked about how I was trying to adjust some layers and do some random stuff, experimental stuff on the screens, and they asked me about that. What were you trying to do? And I explained that, and it was a great interview overall. All right, now it's time to get ready. Like, this is where your prep begins, when you have to do some heavy lifting. You have to make some efforts. This is not something set in stone, but this is the first one, at least, is just like a suggestion from me to you, that you can shortlist 5 companies that you admire the most and you would want to work for them. Like, these can be any companies, either product or service, whatever you have decided for earlier. In our earlier questions, you might have answered, okay, I want to work for an MNC. So what are those MNCs? 5 MNCs that you would want to work at, right? So list them down and look into their website, their work very carefully before you decide on them. So you would know that what can you as a designer bring to the table. Is their working style, is their work really matching your how you want to work or what you want to work on? So there was this one company that was into AR a lot. They did product design, UI, UX, but they were into AR. And when I actually went to their work, it was very much centered to AR. And at this point, I did not want to do that. So I just did not apply to them, because I saw that they are moving towards, slowly shifting towards AR. And if I joined them, maybe 2 to 3 years later or something, I would be expected to also shift to AR. So be very careful where you apply. You should really know that what you want is the same thing that the company wants from you as well. That kind of expectation setting is mutual. Next is connect with its leadership on LinkedIn. Now, this is interesting because you actually get to sometimes even have very interesting conversations with these people around design, around jobs, around what they're looking for. And that's how it adds to your experience as well. Now, this entire thing of hunting for a job is actually an experience in itself. If you look at it, it is increasing your knowledge about the industry as to what is going on out there, and how can you fit into that world. So there is this very good design studio that I followed, and I still follow, and I kind of stalked their leadership on LinkedIn, and I connected with them and I spoke with them. And I'm so happy that I just connected with them, because it was pandemic era, and I told them that I would love to work with them, but they said that because of the COVID-19 situation, we are not hiring. So I said, but on your website, I can see that you are hiring. So that conversation led to a really interesting bit, that how they want to hire, but they cannot for several different reasons. Now, this person is on my LinkedIn, and we are sort of, I can't say buddies, but yeah, we kind of go on and off about each other's posts and things like that. So yeah, connect with people on LinkedIn, especially the people from the companies that you want to work for. Next is update your resume and portfolio. Pretty please do that. Like, if you don't have one, you can create one. And like I said earlier, you can go and check out Sandesh's workshop on the portfolio building. And lastly, take online courses. So you can take online courses, obviously, on Pro App. There are many courses, and a lot of them are going to be launched soon. So you can have a look. Next is your interview round, obviously, and how can you ace it? So very simple and very generic suggestions I have for you. That is, be candid, be be kind of honest and transparent about who you are and what do you want and what have you done in the past. It's okay to be it is sometimes okay to talk about your flaws in your interviews, especially when they ask you to, because then they are ready for that, in the sense that recruiters know, okay, this is these are the shortcomings, these are the flaws in this resource. Can we afford to work with these flaws? And many a times they're okay, but they know about them, so they'll kind of be aware what kind of work to give you and what kind of work to not give you, right? So you can be candid, tell them that you admire them if you get a chance, and you would love to work with them. Next is stay confident. This confidence is a very, very important part of your interview round. If you feel confident, if you feel like, yes, I can do this job, I can work, and I am good at my skills, I'm going to learn a lot from this job, I'm going to make some connections, I'm going to do ABC things and achieve ABC goals, it is very easy for a recruiter to make the decision to hire you. So a lot of times, if you are underconfident, although your CV, portfolio, your interviews have been good, the confidence factor sometimes makes the recruiter reject you, or the person who's interviewing reject you, just because if you don't have confidence in yourself, even they can't. As simple as that, right? And the third one is tell your story. Now, this is very interesting, because in my interview at Procreator, I remember telling a lot of stories that the interviewer was just listening, and I don't think I let them speak at all, which was weird, but but it was very much fun, because they knew what I have been up to since the past few years, or whatever, what I've been doing, and how have I been doing that. And that told everything about me, right? Everything about what are my flaws, or what are my skills. And so if you know a person really well, obviously you'll trust them and you'll hire them, right? So that's how it went, I think, for me. But you can tell your own story. You can tell anything that you did to join the field of design, any past experiences that you had which were fun, and maybe or may not be connected to design, but somewhere they kind of contributed to your experience and what you are today, right? Tell them why you admire them. Now again, this is kind of when you select those 5 companies that you are applying for, obviously you admire them for a reason. And there was this one time I went to a design conference in Bangalore, and they had a lot of workshops there, and I didn't know which one workshop to attend. So I looked into the instructors, and I found this one instructor really I found her personality really interesting or nice. So although the topic was not that great, it was something very generic, but I chose her workshop. And later she asked me that, why did you choose my workshop? And I was quite blank. I was like, I just looked into your portfolio, your profile, and I kind of admired you, which was very stupid at that point for me. I should have known why I really admire this person, or why I really admire this workshop. So same way, know why are you liking this company? What is that one thing that you like about them? So for example, it could be the kind of work you do. I really wish to work on this one fintech project of yours that is there on your website. I think the designs are really cool, the solution is really cool, and I would like to know more about this product while working on it. So something like that would really entice them, the recruiters, for them to select you. Next, dress well. Simple, chic, clean, and shiny. So this is last, but especially when you are interviewing remotely, you have your video on. Dress well, cleanly, and have a nice background, and look very professional and very committed. If you're switching your video on in an interview, it automatically shows that you are not shying away from things. So it's easier for them to trust you and your word, that you're things that you're saying, right? So yeah, these were the pointers to help you in your next interview. I hope you ace it. All right. Moving on to on-ground job hunting. Now, where are all the jobs? Where can you look? And how can you identify the red flags as well? Right, there are red flags. There are things that you can identify and be like, okay, no, I'm not supposed to be going in that at all. And why? We'll be discussing that very shortly. And next is communities and networking. A very very important part of getting the right kind of job is finding the right kind of people. That happens in community forums and when you're networking in meetups and things like that. So we're going to have a very brief look into that as well. So these are the top 4 places that I would go to, or I would limit my search to. Obviously, there are many portals that you can look into, but not sure how effective they would be in terms of the right kind of jobs, or the best or the most updated jobs, right? So I got my I got my job at Procreator through Angel, angel.co. It's the best place for startup jobs. A lot of startup companies are on angel.co, so you can go there and apply for many startup companies, be it product or service. But yeah, if that is what you're looking for, MNCs might not be there. Not for MNCs, the best place to look at is LinkedIn. LinkedIn posts. LinkedIn has a lot of MNC jobs, and many times it is easy apply, or it is their own job portal. So either ways, a lot of MNCs have their jobs on their website as well as on LinkedIn to cover a lot of space. Third is Clutch. Now, this is very weird, as in this is not how, this is not a place where, this is not a job portal. This is not a place where usually a person would be looking for a job. But what I did was I went to Clutch. I did my research on the best design agencies or design studios, and I in my city or in my country, and I just had a look at them, and then I went to their website and I looked at their work, and that is how I listed my top 5 companies that I wanted to work at. You can also do that if you're competitive and you really want the best in the market and things like that. You can go to Clutch, look at these top companies according to the kind of work they do, according to the kind of people they have and things like that. And you can also shortlist your 5 companies and go for one. Next is your friends and network. Best of all, I would say, is your warm contacts. You can use your network if you have a really good one. You can say that, especially on LinkedIn, you can go and say that I am open for so and so job. I'm looking for this, and so a company that is a startup and is a product company and things like that. You can put out your preferences. You can say that you're open for, or you can say that you're open for learning opportunities if you are looking for internships or something like that. LinkedIn and all the other social media platforms, using your warm contacts is the best, because your friends and people you know would recommend you, or they would tell you probably to look into this kind of company or whatever it is. Now what happens is there's a lot of trust factor involved when a warm contact or a mutual contact is involved. So there's this one instance actually. that I once posted that a friend of mine is looking for so and so job, and when they actually found it, it turns out that uh, that particular position um, was given to a person who was very close to the leadership in that company. Now, my friend and I, we were both very pissed because that shouldn't have happened. But it was just trust, in the sense that if you know someone, you are more willing to trust them, and eventually you're more willing to hire them. So it's not wrong to hire people you know. In fact, it is actually a really great way to hiring, that you are hiring in your network, or you are looking for jobs in your network. So the trust factor is really high, and there is some amount of credibility built already than starting from scratch. So always expand your network, expand where you are basically uh, in the industry. So you can, we're going to be actually talking about communities and networking more in the further slides. So let's move ahead. Do you know about all about the red flags? Now, red flags, what are they? Red flags as in, where should you not apply for a job, or what job should you not consider as a fresh or experienced any kind of designer. So there are some red flags that you can identify while applying, or while the interview process or whatever it is happening. So first is templatized JD. When you see that there's a copy pasted JD where job description, where a very same cliche language is being used, that they need these and these things and blah blah blah, you can actually identify that they are not very committed to hiring the best person, or they're not very invested into hiring for this position. So that ways, if you feel that, okay, this job description looks very generic and it's just probably taken off the internet, do not go for that job. Next is when it is about all-in-one unicorn wanted, in the sense that they want you to do a lot of jobs, like have a lot of different skill sets, and there's just one position open for it. So it could be they would expect you to do everything, like graphic design, animation. They will give you work of UI, UX, and everything all at once. Now, there's nothing wrong to it, just that you must make sure that you have most of the work, like 60 to 70% of the work of your niche or of your mastering skill set. For example, it is UX. So 60% of your work is about UX, and rest 40% is about side skills. But when they expect you to be an all-in-one unicorn, they would want you to bounce and be in any department, be it animation, sometimes in UI, or sometimes in UX. That would just leave you like a jack of all and master of none. So you have to make sure that even if they want you to do everything, what is the bandwidth of the kind of work they want you to do? No mentors for you. So what I mean is mentors. You should always look for a place as a young designer where you have a direct senior, or a direct senior designer, or someone you can learn from, whom you can learn from or ask your questions to, who can review your work from a technical angle, who can give you very constructive and proper feedback. So if you're the only designer in the firm, you will have a lot of fun with your own creative space. You will get a lot of opportunities to experiment and things like that. But at the same time, even if you're like the only designer at your company, you must make sure that there is one design advisor. If you are a junior designer, that is, there is one senior person to advise you, senior designer to advise you, or to give you some constructive feedback on your work so that you grow better. That's all. Because if you don't, you will only be, your growth will be very limited, and kind of experimentation that you'll be doing might have a lot of trial and error. So you'll have to do twice the amount of hard work uh, as compared to a place where you will have your own mentor and your own senior person to guide you, right? Fourth one is interview went way too good. So um, when they are actually interviewing you, you should also be actively assessing them, in the sense that what are the kind of questions they're asking, what is that they're looking for, are they sure, and a lot of other factors. Actually, when you speak to a person, you realize that how what are they looking for in a designer that they want to hire, right? So you must also be low-key interviewing them while your interview happens. You can ask them questions like, how do you invest in at the end. So at the end of every good interview, they ask you that, are there any questions that you would want to ask us? Definitely ask questions in your interview. Ask questions like, how do you invest in the growth of your employees? What are the perks that you give your employees that make them function well, or something like that, something that will give you a very clear picture of what is your life going to be after joining this particular company. Now, if your interview went way too good and they were very impressed with you in the interview itself, it's too good to be true, right? In the sense that probably you won't be challenged as much in this job because they are already convinced of you and they're already ready to hire you. Maybe you will not be challenged or not be asked to go out of your comfort zone and learn new things and things like that. So always have that perfect balance of wanting to learn more, at the same time like I'm a work in progress, I'm learning more, but I'm these and these things, and I would want to explore into more. So if they don't consider the explore into more part, they're like, okay, no, we like you as you are, it's fine. That's not a very good attitude for you as an applicant or you as an employee, because you would always want to learn and grow, right? So if the interview went way too good, that can also act as a red flag. Now, finally, about networking. In the pandemic, it is quite challenging for us to be networking because all the physical meetups and events are cancelled, and we are so much into the virtual space right now. Yet there are opportunities to conduct meetups, virtual meetups, attend them. Actually, it's even better now, I would say, because I last year in 2020 I attended a sketch meetup in Germany sketch meetup, which I don't think I would have gotten to attend if we were not having a remote situation or a pandemic situation. So you can capitalize on it the same way. You can go to the Meetups app, and there are, I think, many more places where you can find virtual events, a workshop like this one. But this is more one-to-one. There are a lot of meetups, even virtual, that will help you connect with people, will help you connect with industry experts. And that ways, you can also probably find a really good job, right? Next is Slack workspaces. Now, there are a lot of design communities on Slack. One is our own Pro App Workspace. You can join that. There are a lot of people, a lot of like-minded designers, developers, creators whom you can speak with on that Slack workspace. Or there is this one another Slack workspace called the Designership. That's a more that is also a very good place to be networking or talking about not just design, but also a lot of side fields, that is your content writing, development, other side technical fields. Yeah. So go and maybe join these workspaces, and even you can even network over there. Host a show and tell. Now, this is something not very common, but you can actually, if there are no meetups happening, for example, you can't see anything, you can't find anything. This is what I did. So in my city of Navi Mumbai, uh, when I started out as a designer, I was, I think, 1.5 years into the industry, and I really wanted to attend these events and meetups, which are all happening in Mumbai. And I had to travel like 1 or 2 hours to get there every Sunday morning, and it was really hectic. And I did not want to do that, so I actually hosted my own show and tell, where I invited a few designer friends of mine, and we sort of took um, we sort of took the liberty of showing our work to some of the participants in that show and tell session. We got like a turn up of 30 people at a local cafe, and we had a lot of fun networking. Actually made great friends there. Who are still in touch with me and are designers in great companies, and that's how I expanded my network, by creating a show and tell session on my own. As simple as that. Next is your online presence. Now let's talk about it in a little detail. Firstly, your social profiles. Secondly, your website. Now a lot of designers have their own website, which is amazing. It can be a portfolio website, but it can also it can also act as your resume, talk about you as a designer, your experience, and things like that. Let's look into it. Now, the most trending is Instagram, I think, for this generation, for Gen Z, that Instagram, everyone is on Instagram. All the designers putting out all their work, and apart from Dribbble, of course. So you can also have a separate professional Instagram account, a business account, where you can post all your work. You can create and post design content. Be consistent about it. You can blog about your work, in the sense that you can click pictures of your work, your desk. You can click pictures of a lot of things around you that are related to design, the books that you're reading, the kind of work that you've been doing. You can talk about it in the caption and blog about it, because at the end of the day, Instagram is actually just a photo blog. Next, replace Facebook with LinkedIn. Add every detail on your profile. That's very important. On LinkedIn, your experience, your academics, everything. It's like your online resume. You can consider it that way. Next is connect with your school and college mates. That's how everyone starts. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile and you make one, you can obviously, for starters, add your school and college mates, and then go ahead with adding your someone whom you interned with, or things like that. Next is announce that you are open to work. You can write a post about it. You can have your display picture talk about it. And lastly, seek recommendations from people that you know, whom you have probably worked with, or who would be relevant in giving you a recommendation from. It could be from your college, your teacher, your professor, or someone like that, who would basically write good recommendation for to add to your credibility. Next is some playgrounds, that is your Dribbble, Behance, and Medium. Now, anywhere, any social media platform, you need to post consistently. Like I said, you can rebound on shots on Dribbble, you can create your own portfolio on Behance, and write about case studies on Medium. That is also, so if you are doing a redesign project or a concept, you can actually write about the whole UX process that you had on Medium. You can talk about it and share the link on other platforms. Now, coming back to your own website, which could be a portfolio website, as we said, or talking about you as a designer. Now make sure that you have a very short and sweet domain name, not a very long one, something that has a good recall value. Now we all know that shorter the domain name, the more expensive it can be, but make it also very unique so that you can get one for a good price that is short and unique and is probably your full name or your brand identity or something like that. You can show off your web design skills on that website, but just don't overdo it. Don't put each and every skill that you would want to show just right there. You can keep it simple. You will have to craft and curate the content on it, like what are the kind of works that you've done, what are the kind of skills that you have, what can you help with, UI design, UX design, content writing, blah blah blah. So keep it craft and curated really well, short and sweet, so that the person who's consuming that would not get bored and at the same time would be actually interested in contacting you. Next is know your why and your audience. So when you're creating your website, make sure that, okay, I'm applying to this particular job, so I will be targeting product companies that are startups. So what kind of design language will I follow for that kind of an audience? And why are you creating this website? Are you creating this website only to secure a job, or is it a long-term thing that you would want to, keep updating and things like that? So these kind of preferences will help you get the perfect website of yours that will help you eventually get the perfect job, right? Now compete like a pro. So here I have a little bit of a quote for you guys, that is, strive for progress, not perfection, and inevitably you shall achieve both. So it's right now, if you are a young designer just starting out, don't stress over perfection right from the beginning. Just look at the progress and growth that you are making for the coming months, probably year, and with that practice, with that kind of practice, you will definitely achieve perfection. So we are towards the end of our workshop, towards the end of our my presentation. So I would suggest you guys to keep learning, keep growing, and that is the underlying factor of you getting a perfect job, is that when you are expanding your horizons, when you are basically improving upon your skills, and that is shown in your resume, in your work, in your portfolio, the kind of quality that you will deliver to this company. So keep growing, keep learning, and obviously to learn more and grow, you can definitely attend more and more workshops just like this one. So my next workshop very soon coming on ProApp is about UX writing. So you can enroll for that. It's everything about UX writing. How is it a very booming field right now? So I actually did a poll on LinkedIn. I asked everyone what is the one from a few options, what is the one topic that you would want me to talk on, and a huge number of people said UX writing. So that's what it's going to be, and I'm really excited about it. So you can stay in touch with me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or follow on Instagram, and I am open to a conversation about this workshop on these platforms. So I think it's time for some Q&A. Rashika, you're back. Great.
Hey, Aisha, I
Hi.
think it was one heck of a workshop. I think you should have a sip of water, a sip or two of water. That will keep you hydrated. There are so many questions lined up for you.
Oh my God. Okay, that's actually, I am thirsty. Yes.
Okay. So actually, there were so many. I have made a list of it. So the first question is like really, really interesting.
Okay.
So the person is interested in knowing that, just a second. So what is the scope for the kind of people who can design as well as code the user interface? So let's say for an Android or an iOS app,
Mhm.
what kind of job profiles can be applied? So they can develop as well, they can design as well. So
Okay.
what's the job profile they can apply to? And that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's great. Actually, if this person can design and develop both at the same time, I mean, it. So there was this one term called full stack designer instead of full stack developer. People on the internet, I think on Instagram, some design influencers were calling it full stack designers, who people who can design and develop both. Now in India, as a market reality, there aren't many jobs for this kind of profile. However, if this person wants to freelance, there's a lot of scope in that area, sorry, uh, to freelance as a designer plus developer, because usually when companies are hiring, especially in the um, recent 2 years or something, there are always either developers or designers. So if this person wants to go for both, it's really amazing. But at the same time, in India, the market is quite limited. In the West, I'm not really sure, but definitely this person can have their own space in freelance and do great there.
Right. And also, I think the main thing should be they need to be able to find that correct balance and that correct soft corner or the soft point where they can, work in both the skills, meanwhile improve both, and also don't get wobbled by too much skills and knowledge where to improve and what not to improve.
Yes, that's going to be a real challenge for this person, because even in design there are so many subfields to master into, and if it's design and development both, it's like a huge pool of skills. Correct.
Okay, so the next question is from Parth. He wants to know that how can he improve his creativity and problem solving skills?
Okay, creativity in problem solving or creativity
and
and problems?
and problem solving.
Creativity, you can it okay, so first and the most important thing is creativity can't be taught, it can be improved. So you must know where you are right now in terms of your creativity. If you're talking about aesthetics, firstly, you can practice a lot, you can look for a lot of trends and design inspirations to practice. Firstly, that will help your creative aspect. Then when it comes to problem solving, a little differently, um, or creative problem solving, if you that's what you mean, you can read a lot of case studies on Medium about products and about how people are solving other people are solving different problems in the market. Basically, if there is this one app and a person is talking, a lot of people there talk about problems, so how they solved a particular problem, and the various aspects of it. So that kind of reading, I think, on Medium and maybe other portals, other blogs, would be really helpful. Some podcasts that are very specific to user experience can also help a lot.
Got it. Okay, so the next one is, I think, a little personal one, and the person wants to and the person wants to know that what was the name of the design company you were following, but I think that's a little private, so maybe you can list down 2 or 3 design companies that you follow on LinkedIn.
Design companies
That you follow on LinkedIn or maybe somewhere
I
else.
follow on LinkedIn. Okay. Actually, there are many. I can't really think of anything on top of my head, but you can
I
definitely
believe
follow Procreator.
Procreator is
Exactly.
that's the most obvious question answer, I believe. Okay, so it's the next one is from Ridhima. She wants to know that is it okay to reach out to the recruiter after the final interview is done?
Yes. it is definitely okay, and it is actually a good thing if you professionally follow up with the recruiter, in the sense that usually recruiters give you a time, good recruiters give you a time that we'll get back to you on the result, uh, negative or positive, any either of those, by so and so date. And in case they don't, you it's actually really professional, and it shows your commitment if you're following up on that. So definitely yes, you must follow up with them. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is from Imtiaz. He wants to know, how do you showcase your past NDA projects in your portfolio?
Past NDA projects in your portfolio, that's a
You
very
might have-
good question.
Right.
So there are two ways to go about with it. One is where you can possibly hide the brand identity of the client. So NDAs are also sometimes of different lengths, right? In the sense that sometimes you can't reveal the problem, sometimes you can't reveal the solution, some places you can't reveal the brand identity, and some places you can't reveal anything at all. So it depends on the NDA also. So some loose ones might allow you to showcase your work without their brand identity on it, so you can just blur out the logo and then show it. In places where it's not allowed at all, you can create similar projects which are so it depends on why is that you want to show this particular project to that recruiter. So I want to show this because it was designed so well, or was it because my problem solving was really well in it. It depends on that. So the part that you want to show, you can just remove it, recreate it in your own way, or write about it in Medium without compromising the privacy of the company. And then you can, obviously in your interview, you can be very open about it, that okay, yes, this is the company that I was working for, and this is what I mean. So yeah, that would work, I think. And yeah, I actually relate with this person a lot, because even in my design career, I have been a victim of not being able to showcase a lot of my great designs due to NDA, which is most of the times the case. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so the next one is a little complicated, I think, but we'll be able to crack it. So this one is from Mena. She wants to know that sometimes we are bored towards a job or an activity. So what to do? Although we are interested in it, but due to lack of knowledge, we never consider it as a serious problem.
Due to lack of knowledge, you
So
okay.
she's saying that she gets bored as well
Okay.
towards
Okay.
his or
Okay.
her job or activity, but they're still interested, right?
Okay.
But maybe due to lack of knowledge, they never consider it as a serious problem.
Got it. So I think this person, Mehnaz, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Mehnaz, maybe what you can do is, I think what you're facing is that you can't relate to the problems that are there, or the kind of work that is there. So maybe find work that would resonate with you, that you okay. So answer this question for yourself. Apart from design, what else are you interested in? So it could be probably cosmetics, or it could be anything, actually, as random as that. And you can find a job or some work around it, firstly. Secondly, lack of knowledge is never an excuse. You can definitely go and learn a lot out there, especially on ProApp, learning from courses and workshops like these. And the lack of knowledge part will it'll get resolved, and eventually you will automatically resonate and relate to the kind of work that you're doing, and that will build interest. Because I think what is happening is you're not getting the drive, because you're not getting probably you're not getting some positive reinforcement, in the sense that when you achieve something really great in your work, that oh, I solved this problem on my own, I'm gonna do more of it. So you can definitely get the knowledge and then achieve a lot and be more interested in it, or just be more involved in it, I guess.
I think that was a very good answer. Okay, so the next one is an anonymous question. So the person is saying that they would like to work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
However, they do not have big online presence. How they
Okay.
can improve?
Okay. So you can improve on your online presence. Firstly, create your social profiles, like we spoke. Create your own website. But that's not it. You have to be also a very good content creator if you are if you want to really be a great designer. So you must post consistently over your socials. Be very transparent on your socials, like even if it's your design account, you can actually put your face on it, and uh, have a great website that talks about you as a designer, your skills, your work, and that will actually help a lot with your online presence. It will boost up your chances of getting the kind of job that you're targeting at.
Okay, so before I ask the next question, I have a question for you. So, how did you like? What was your transition from from journalism, studying journalism, to a designer?
Okay,
So,
that's a great question.
okay.
So, like I said, I've been designing since my college days. Even though I was studying journalism, I was a graphic designer. And for my final year internship, I was supposed to get a journalism internship, that is an associate reporter or something like that. And most of my classmates and friends went for that, obviously. But for some reason, I couldn't secure an internship. I applied a bunch of places. Like I said today, 50 companies. I just mass applied for internship, and I did not get even one journalism internship, which is so good because I'm thankful for it, because then I got an internship in UI UX. And although I was a graphic designer, I told them that I would want to learn UI UX. And my boss, she was a majors in product design, and she kind of gave me books and guided me and taught me and told me how to go about with it. So that's how I think transitioned and started off with my design career.
I think now it's very easy for individuals to directly start in design. But maybe
Yeah.
back 3-4 years or maybe 5 years, we studied something else, then learned about design, and then entered the industry. So it's still little streamlined for the designers or the freshers who are starting today, and I think that's really good. The industry is blooming. Okay, so the last question, since we have a minute left, it's from Jijo. He wants to know that how can he improve his UI skill, since most of the companies are looking for UI UX designer who can do both rather than just a UX designer.
So he wants to improve on his UX skills?
UI skills. Since most of the company are looking for UI UX designers.
Okay. So UI, the best way I think to practice your UI skills is redesigning good interfaces. So you can do that by taking either by taking screenshots of the best designed apps on your phone, which you really admire, or you can go to Dribbble and look at some really cool app screens or something like that, and redesign in the sense exactly replicate them, and you will understand the kind of thought process that went into creating those designs. You will remember those selection controls or those input styles or something like that, and obviously eventually your UI skills will improve.
Got it. Okay, Aisha, I think the
was the
same
last
way as the last question. Again, there's one more question, the same question which we answered, that code, a person who can code and design as well.
Okay.
So, what kind of job profiles? So, I think we have already answered that.
Mm-hmm.
So, this brings us to the end of the workshop today. I really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping to, host the other one. the UX writing, which is my niche, and I I completely like it and love the part about design. So I think thanks a lot, Aisha, and I hope you all learned something new today. Thank you all for joining us. Let's meet next week on 9th of October at the same time for our third workshop, which is Career Switch to UX Design, which is conducted by Kanika, a senior UX designer. And if you haven't enrolled already, go to ProApp, do that right now, and have a wonderful rest of the day, people. Tada! Take care, Aisha. Take care, everyone. Bye.